Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. Don't worry. Don't worry. Everything, we just have to have a little faith. Everything happens for a reason.
Don't worry, be happy.
You just gotta push through it. Hang in there.
Am I your wife in labor or something?
What is? That's where we go.
I don't know. I don't know.
We couldn't be, oh my goodness, I got my leg trapped under a boulder. We're waiting for rescue.
You'd be way too calm for that.
Just hang in there, Andy.
Just hang in. It's okay.
It's okay. You just got to have a little faith. Everything happens for a reason.
Oh man!
I know
if my leg was trapped under a boulder, I have a feeling I'd probably react the same way your wife would during labor if you were saying that.
Hey, I know things look grim now. We're from The Next Reel. It's that podcast you're listening to. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Pete Wright. That there is Andrew Nelson.
Howdy-ho!
Mr. Hinky.
I know, he just came out of nowhere.
Ow! Oh, I know where he came from. He came to listen to the show, too. I love it. We spoil movies every single week, and this week is like all the rest. You can find out more about us at thenextreel.com, where you can check us out on the blog. You can read the blog stylings of one Steve Sarmento. Fantastic. And you can join the conversation in all of our assorted and sundry social channels. Whatever your preference for social engagement, we will be there. If we're not there, just let us know. We'll find you there. We'll come. We'll join you. I think that's it. Do we have anything else to update the people? Oh, you know what? You can also check us out on Instagram. If you're not friends with us on Instagram, you can follow our post there, Andy versus the People, and you can also check out letterboxd.com for our watch list of 2014 films.
You can see all the movies we're going to be talking about this year. Watch them ahead of time so you're ready to listen.
That's the stuff, people. That's the stuff.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Let's jump into... Do we have any announcements for the people right now? I don't think we do.
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Let's do trailers.
Let's. My trailer this week. I'm trying to stay in theme with the films we're going to be talking about in this series, the found footage style films. I've been really scouring, trying to find some found footage style films that are going to be coming out soon, and I wanted to talk about those trailers. So I've got one this week. I'm hoping I'll be able to find one for all four of these shows. I'm not sure if there are that many found footage films coming out in the coming months, but for starters, I think I'm off to a good start. We've got Afflicted, which is a fun little found footage style film about two friends who are going to take one of those, great trips where they're going to travel the world for a full year and basically just see all sorts of countries and have all sorts of fun. Now, according to the trailer, which is, it's a really fun trailer. The whole thing essentially kind of plays backwards as you kind of see the results of what happens of this whole thing, and then it kind of
very
moves.
Clever, very clever.
It's pretty fun. But and it looks like day one is where one of these best friends hooks up with a lady in a foreign land, and she turns him into something. I don't know what, but he is definitely afflicted, just as the title says. And it looks like fun, though. I mean, these are guys, they're kind of young, athletic sorts of guys, and they're running around with GoPros strapped onto their bodies and everything. And once he's afflicted, I mean, we see him, he's getting like superhuman strength. He jumps out of a window from very high, and we see him as he's wearing this GoPro as he falls all over the ground and lands on the ground far below, then turns and looks at the people up above him, jumping from building to building, throwing people around. It looks like a really interesting film. And, I admit I am one of those people who is a bit of a sucker for found footage films. I think that people can do some really interesting things with them. They don't always, but they can.
Are you pre-apologizing?
I'm pre-apologizing that this could suck. But right now, I think it looks pretty fun. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it actually won... what did it win? It won Best Picture at the Fantastic Fest. Was it just last year? Best Director and Best Screenplay also. So it's, I'd like to think that it's going to be pretty good. I'm excited about it.
That's awesome. I think it looks. The trailer is really compelling. I count me in, especially after we're doing all this found footage stuff. I'm excited about it. Looks good.
Yeah, and we'll be able to see it very soon because it is actually going to begin streaming. It'll be on VOD and theaters all April 4th. So just about a week after the show.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it.
Yes, indeedy.
Okay, my turn.
Go for it.
Okay. I don't know what to make of this. Do you know what I mean? Like, here's the thing. I'm doing The Maze Runner this week.
Mm-hmm.
Maze Runner is directed by Wes Ball, written by James Dasher and Grant Pierce Myers. Wes Ball, we know he's spent a lot of time in art. In the art department, he's done a lot of, short films and things like that. In terms of feature direction, I think this is it.
Yeah,
spent a lot of time in visual effects, a lot of shorts and TV movies, that sort of a thing.
Yep.
But we don't know much of him as a feature writer and director. So Wes Ball, The Maze Runner, to me looks. And this is why it's appealing. It looks like it's a cross between Cube, which I deeply love,
mm-hmm.
and Hunger Games.
Right.
Which, it's an acquired taste. I've grown to appreciate what it is. Where these boys in a post-apocalyptic world, cue the post-apocalyptic world, boys are thrown into a community after having their memory erased, and they're all trapped in a mysterious maze. They just wake up. They don't know how they got there. They don't know, don't know where they're from. They don't know where they're going. And they have to be thrown into this maze and run the maze in order to try to escape.
Right.
I like mazes, and I feel like there is enough sort of spiritual DNA of two movies that I do like that I'm willing to give this a shot. Now, why am I hedging? Because the trailer doesn't look that great. Like, it just doesn't look that great. And I feel like there are a lot of people talking about this film, and I'm having trouble figuring out why. So this is my benefit of the doubt pick. Where I feel like it has the seeds of an interesting idea, and I'm going to give it a shot. Wes Ball, James Dasher. You know who's in it? Dylan O'Brien. This is I gather he's going to be the hunk of 2015. We know Dylan O'Brien if you are a big fan of Teen Wolf. He plays Styles on Teen Wolf. He was in The Internship, which I'm sure you stood in line for.
3 times.
Yeah, that was a win. So he's done his share of paid placement movies and hunky CW films or shows. So that's it. It comes out September 19th, 2014, the USA. And so I don't know. Keep an eye out for this one. It may be an interesting watch.
Is it a series of books your kids have gotten into at all?
Nope.
Not at all yet.
You? Huh? Is your wife?
None of us have, no. But I guess it's a trilogy. They've got The Maze Runner, and then The Scorch Trials and The Death Cure as the 3 books. Plus a prequel, The Kill Order.
The Kill Order is, that's right. That's right. So I don't know what to make of it, but I feel like it's another one of those that, I haven't seen it, but I've probably seen it.
Yeah, it does feel that way a little bit. There's something compelling, and maybe it's just the maze. There's something that seems kind of fun about
something different.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea, and I think what compelled me when I saw the trailer was that cube aspect that you were talking about, because the cube definitely was a really fascinating sci-fi, and the whole concept of that really won me over, even if it fell apart at the end, but. It was a lot of fun. And this definitely has that sort of feel like, why are these boys thrown into this giant maze that they have to try to get out?
Yeah.
What's the reason? And so, it definitely piques my curiosity. I'll be curious to see, what the the vibe of the YA world is by the time September rolls around. Is this going to be the next Divergent or Hunger Games, or is this going to be the next I don't know, one of those ones that didn't make it?
The next anything else? Mortal Bones, City of Bones, Mortal Instruments. Yeah. I'm with you. September 19th. Mark your calendars, or don't.
Or not.
Let's get quarantined.
Ready?
Okay.
Hi, I'm Angela Vidal. We're in Los Angeles, traveling along with the fire department. Is that so bad?
These are the men you'll be shadowing tonight. Wherever they go, you go too.
Police are here. It might be a little more serious than we thought.
A woman was screaming bloody murder back there.
Fire department's about to begin the rescue process. Police say that she lives alone. She's not very social.
Okay. We're gonna get you some medical help, okay?
Yeah, buddy, come on.
Tape everything. You hear me? Tape everything.
Sit down. We have an officer down. I need an ambulance immediately.
Do not try to leave the building. This will all be over shortly.
Why are they isolated?
I don't know more than you do right now, okay?
We were told that tenants inside need medical aid. Chief!
Everyone's been evacuated. Everyone's completely safe.
Why would he say that?
I can't get through to my husband and my daughter has a fever.
We gotta get out of here.
We're filming this. People are gonna see what you're doing, guys.
We go out.
They're not gonna let us out of here alive, are they?
No matter what happens, just keep moving.
My daughter has a fever.
I think I know what this is.
We need a doctor. Whose apartment is this? Oh my God.
You have no idea how bad this thing is.
I'll get it! I'm fixing it! Come on!
All right, Andy. This is it. New series.
I know. No Tom Hanks in this one. Although,
Oh, yeah.
Just
I'll bet you have some follow-up, don't you?
as a quick side note, follow-up to our last episode and series, I did get a little geeky in my spare time, just, alone with myself in the evening.
Just a smidge.
I, just like when we were doing Close Encounters, I did the Steven Spielberg's cost per finished minute over on our the movie cost per minute breakdown that you can find over on our website. But I have now done a Tom Hanks cost per finished minute. That's right. You can look at all of his films, all 43, and you can kind of look and see where they rank. Now, some of them, have no financial information. Basically, 33 to 43 don't have a lot of info. And I really left things out where he's just like, comes in for a scene or things like that. It's really just kind of the big ones. It does start from He Knows You're Alone, goes all the way through his most recent one, Saving Mr. Banks. Saving Mr. Private Ryan Banks.
Hey, so what's the lowdown? Give me your lessons learned. What are the highlights? What are the lowlights?
Well, Forrest Gump, which is definitely one of the top grossing films that we've talked about on the show, is not the number one film on his list. Any guess as to what the number one film would be? Highest grossing per finished minute?
I don't know. You're going to say it's something.
Let me just say it's a lot shorter than Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump's running time did not help it out.
Man, I don't even know.
Pretty recent. It's Toy Story 3.
Oh.
Toy Story 3 is number 1. Forrest Gump is number 2. Number 3 is Toy Story. And number 4 is Toy Story 2. So those Toy Story movies know how to make a buck.
They sure do.
Good old Pixar. And then number 5, this surprised me.
The Man with One Red Shoe.
Man, you're good. No. Number 5 is The Da Vinci Code.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me, actually.
It surprises me. I guess maybe it's just because people seemed kind of like, I know Dan Brown's books are very popular, but for some reason the movies seem to take a lot of flack because Tom Hanks had really long hair and, that none protested the filming. And it just seemed like a lot of people were upset about them making this, even though the book had been around for a while beforehand. But yeah, I guess, it just did really well. So it definitely raked in the dough.
It had the guilty curiosity vibe going for it. Like even people who didn't like it went to see it because you have to.
And that's a film, it made a lot more internationally than domestically. I mean, normally it's it's kind of close. You can kind of see like Forrest Gump 329 million domestically, internationally 349 million. But Da Vinci Code was 217 million domestically and 550 million internationally.
Wow.
So it did quite a bit overseas business.
Wow.
Which must be why they made a second one and why they're making
a third one.
Yeah.
I wonder if he'll have the long hair again.
We'll see. But
okay.
there's only a few films that have lost money that I found. Joe vs. the Volcano, which we've talked about on the show.
Yep.
Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, which kind of surprised me being the big Oscar nominee that it was. But I guess it just didn't connect with people.
It didn't even connect with I mean, like, we connect with a lot, and it didn't connect with us.
I like it okay. I like Tom Hanks in it. I like the conceit of the story, even if I found it rather problematic. But, it's all right. I didn't think it was a money loser. That kind of surprised me a little bit.
All right.
Bonfire of the Vanities, which is really, I guess,
that
no surprise.
Yeah, not a surprise.
Yeah, and then Radio Flyer was the biggest loser on his list. And that's an uncredited part, but it's big enough where I figured I'd include it.
All right.
So,
all right, good list.
Yeah, so if you want to check it out, you can go over to our website and click on the link to see the movie cost per minute breakdown.
Did we have any other follow-up while we're following up?
Yeah, one last thing. Last week on the League of Their Own episode, I did mention that Gina Davis does have an Institute on Gender in Media, a nonprofit that she started to try to get more people paying attention to writing roles and creating opportunities for women or for young girls to see roles where women aren't just models in bikinis and all that, but actually, like it says on the website, if she can see it, she can be it. So trying to create more balance in the media. And I forgot to mention the website, which is cjane.org. That's SEEJANE.org. And you can find the link over on our show notes for the League of Their Own episode.
Outstanding.
Yes, indeed.
All right, then. Now, can we talk about found footage films?
Now, let's finally get to what we're here to talk about.
I'm telling you.
I hear you.
So we're starting this series on found footage films, and the first film we're doing is Quarantine.
Yes.
Which came out in 2008. It was a remake of the... Well, it's not a remake. It's based on... Well, it's pretty much remade.
Pretty much a shot-for-shot remake.
A shot-for-shot remake on a set-for-set. I mean, it's really, really close to the Spanish film Rec, R-E-C, and, really, really close to that film.
Yes. Did you end up seeing Rec?
No, I haven't seen Rec.
Okay.
But I've seen it.
Yeah. Well,
what I've heard is it's not as good. It's close, but it's not as good as the remake.
Well, we'll talk about that because I think there's more to talk about as far as that. I think it actually is very good, and I would say that they're very comparable films. But let's get into that a little later in the show. But first you're going to say,
I want to talk about found footage because found footage is, I don't want to say it's necessarily a recent kind of invention. It's pretty recent. I mean, we're talking about, and I started reading about this. Have you seen Punishment Park?
Researching found footage, Punishment Park and Cannibal Holocaust, the two, what some people say are kind of the foundations for it. I haven't seen them, but I now have them right at the top of my Netflix queue. So I'm hoping to see them, maybe not before the next episode, but maybe after that, maybe by the time we get to Chronicle.
I wonder. So this idea of found footage, let's walk through just what are the conceits of found footage? What makes it a found footage film?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, it's hard to say it's a genre. I mean, if anything, it's a style of making a film. It works really well in the horror genres. And in a way, it's kind of has become a subgenre of its own. The idea is that somebody has kind of walked into a situation where they've found a tape or found a reel of film or something that they have then gone and watched, and now they have an opportunity to see basically a story that has happened. Somebody before that person found this found footage, this found tape, actually was in a situation. They happened to kind of be filming the entire situation, and ended up dying, disappearing, dropping the camera, whatever it is, whatever the conceit is, and then this person found it. As you know, it is often used in horror movies because it's very easy to kind of pick people off. Eventually, kind of the cameraman gets killed too, leaving behind that camera that's just sitting there. Batteries die, somebody finds it later, or the film runs out, whatever it is. And I mean, that's really the conceit. It's just somebody setting up their own camera. We happen to now later be watching the footage of what happened at that time.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of an offshoot, or kind of a marriage of sort of this stylized documentary film, this sort of fictionalized documentary, and that's what Punishment Park is. Based on this sort of fake insurrection camp for insurrectionists, where the state comes down and makes these people run across the desert and ends up shooting them anyway, and so it's a documentary crew. That was very much a documentary crew, but it's a fake documentary, and that's what it sort of has the style of. I think in order, once we got into the Blair Witch Project and the films that came after, much, like, Paranormal Activity and Wreck and Quarantine and other films we're going to be talking about in this series, you end up with, like you say, this the protagonist is probably going to die. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things that makes it you're going to get the attachment that you're going to experience is going to be betrayed.
Right.
And so that's a part of it. And the jiggly monkey returns.
Yes, back to lots of shaky cam.
Wow, the shaky cam.
Yes.
So with that, here we are with Quarantine. Quarantine stars the fantastic Jennifer Carpenter, who we know Jennifer Carpenter. She's done a lot of stuff. Mostly what I know her as is Dexter, and I believe she's the sister wife of Dexter. I believe she's married to Michael C. Hall.
Which is kind of weird.
played his sister on the show, which is a little bit weird. But she's fantastic on that show. And so this was I discovered this movie after I had seen her for many years on Dexter. And let's see, what else did we? I lost my tab. So this film she was in.
Well, she was also in The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
That's right.
Another little, kind of a fun little horror thing. And then the strangest thing on her list, when you look at all these different things that she's in, lots of movies and TV and stuff, is Pound Puppies, the TV show, which I had no idea she's one of the puppies. And so I'll have to listen next time my daughter is watching Pound Puppies, listen for Pepper.
That's funny. This film is directed and conceived of by John Erick Dowdle.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say conceived of, considering it's a remake, but
right.
John Erick Dowdle and
he conceived of the idea to remake.
John Erick Dowdle and his brother Drew Dowdle wrote this script based on the movie Wreck by Jaume Balagueró, Luiso Verdejo, and Paco Plaza.
Yes.
And then John Erick directed it, and Drew, I think, was an executive producer on it, I believe. Yes.
All right. So, Quarantine. First of all, I think we can agree it lives up to its title as a found footage film.
I think it does. We have a cameraman. In this case, it's a news cameraman, TV reporter, and her cameraman, who are in this building filming what we think is going to be an evening following the fire department around to get a news story, kind of a night in the life of a fireman.
Which is a really... That's a lame job.
Well, I'll tell you something. The thing that struck me when I saw this is, I don't know if you saw the documentary 9/11, but it was a really haunting, powerful documentary by some French filmmakers, I believe, who actually were making a documentary following firemen around in New York City. And oddly enough, they were there filming these guys
when 9/11 happened.
When 9/11 happened, and it ended up becoming a totally different documentary. And it's really haunting as these guys were following the firemen around through 9/11. It is truly one of the most haunting documentaries you could watch. It's just so right there, and the fact that they were filming it all is just it kind of shakes you, especially because the two brothers are following two different units, and the two brother filmmakers, and they don't know if the other brother is alive or not. So,
oh my gosh,
it's a really heavy documentary, but I definitely recommend everyone watch it. But because of that, I totally bought into the conceit for this.
Oh, and I would say I'm not saying that I don't buy into the conceit, only because as a reporter I've done those things, and it's really lame. It's a horrible, lame, stupid thing when you have to take those assignments, and so I imagine anyway. So she finds a story. You know what I like? So here's what I like about that. Speaking of kind of experience as a reporter, she actually does a really solid job of playing the role. She kind of has that sort of that kind of energetic kind of newbie, frustrated that there's nothing more exciting happening. Careful what you wish for sort of style, and real. Kind of has no real understanding of who she's talking to, right? I mean, there's just a real style difference between the fireman and her. She just seems so inexperienced, and I think she plays it really, really well, and interacts with the fireman in a really interesting way.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, the role of her cameraman.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Scott. He's played by Steve Harris, and I wonder. Talk about the role of the cameraman in these found footage films.
Well, yeah, I mean, inevitably the cameraman is, in a weird way, kind of becomes a thankless role, because it's an actor who needs to not ever be seen for the most part. Right. And I imagine as an actor, I don't know, I guess there can be something compelling about that, but there's also in that egotistical way of being an actor where it's like, well, I don't want to do it if I'm not going to be on screen,
Right.
But I think there are people who are drawn to that. And so the nature of the cameraman is it's a character who's there, who is operating the camera, and who has to be interacting with the scene. And the thing that happens in any found footage film is you are no longer a camera that is essentially present but not present, which is really the case in every film that you watch except for found footage films, where the actors can be having a completely intimate conversation. Like two actors could have an intimate scene. The camera can be right up next to their faces, but they will not be any the wiser that there's an entire audience around the world watching this moment. It's really just those two people.
Right.
The camera is essentially invisible. Once you go into the world of found footage, that cameraman and the camera are there, and they are in every scene interacting and a part of the scenes. And as we see in this film, the cameraman actually has to really step in and become, in a way, it's like we become a tool to actually kill something. I mean, the cameraman takes his camera and beats one of these people's faces in.
Yes.
And I think that's the big difference between regular films and found footage films, is the fact that this character is there. They are present, the camera is present, and they have to act and interact with everything that's going on around them, just like the actors are, or the other main characters that they're filming.
Now, Steve Harris is an actor I love this guy. I really do love this guy. He's a fantastic actor. We know him from as playing Eugene Young on The Practice for many years, and he has a fantastic voice.
Yeah,
and it's not just his kind of range, right? He's got a beautiful sort of buttery kind of deep voice, but it's his the way the mechanics of his mouth are such that he is in just like right on the verge of stepping into this sort of classical tone, and he sounds so sophisticated, and the way his character plays off of hers is in such a sort of paternal and sort of caring, gentle, but voice of strength. And I think that really adds to the role of the cameraman in this film.
Yeah, and something else that I think is apparent looking at a film like this versus like our next film that we're going to be talking about, Cloverfield, is the skill set of that person who's operating the camera. Yes, in either case, there's still going to be shaky cam, but I think in context of the story, Steve Harris's character, Scott, is a professional TV cameraman. He knows how to at least hold a camera and operate it. So even though he's running around filming everything, it does have a more of a sense of stability, even than when Angela, Jennifer Carpenter's character, takes over the camera later in the film. She's a lot more shaky. She doesn't know how to use it clearly as well as he did. And that's something like the next film, Cloverfield. I mean, that's just a guy who's handed a camera, and he clearly has no sense what he's doing with the camera.
Absolutely.
So there is definitely a line that actor has to play when they're holding the camera. That's another thing about the nature of these films is often that actor is not physically holding the camera. You've got a camera operator holding the camera or the DP. And usually it's a much bigger rig. It's got wires off of it. It's got all sorts of stuff going on. And the actor, Steve Harris, is standing nearby. He's like right next to it.
Right. I think that's there is a. I think you're right to compare that particularly to Cloverfield. The next, as we talk about that, the level of sophistication that they bring to that role, it feels like a much more natural presence to have a camera on. Like there is from time to time a public safety question about the camera, which seems very real to me. Like it seems very natural that the police and the fire, representatives of the fire department would say, don't film this, don't film this. And so there's enough of that. And there are sequences where they call into question that, that element of, the omniscient cameraman, where they say don't film this, so they hold the camera down, and there we are looking at somebody's butt during an important conversation.
Right.
So it lends to that sense of kind of reality that they're trying to convey. I think there is a risk that shows up in the third act as things get really frenetic. And that is that the film falls into first-person shooter mode. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Especially once the lights go out, it becomes so much harder to see things that it really is like that one vision, the one window that we're looking into this the complex through, because the light's on the camera, it really becomes that first-person runner. And they have to design it in such a way where in order to see this person jumping out at you, you kind of have to move over a little bit, and then they jump out, and you do get a little bit of that toward the end.
Yeah,
it's a conceit. The thing about found footage films is it is a conceit that they have to set up well, I feel, in the beginning, not just kind of the first act leading up to kind of the inciting incident that really sets things off, but also once things are set off, you really have to get a sense as to the reason why the camera is still rolling. And I feel like that's always a struggle with found footage films, is like, why are we still filming this? Is there a reason for the camera to still be on? And I feel like this one does it pretty well. I feel the conceit that Jennifer, her character Angela, sells on, people need to know what happened here. That, they've locked us in. There's a disease. They won't let us talk to anybody. We're going to document this to show. It's really like gathering evidence in a way. And I think that works really well. And it does lead to, like, toward the third act, aside from the first-person shooter mode, it's why don't you just put the camera down so you have free hands and you can, operate more effectively. Okay, sure, you've got a light on the camera. Okay, I can buy into that. But still, it's always that balance of, where is the logic in the reasoning there? And I think as long as they set up everything in the beginning well, I will buy into it through to the end. And yes, even though it does turn into that first-person shooter mode toward the end, I still, for the most part, buy into this one. I don't think it falls into anything that slips from me going, I'm not in this anymore.
Well, I don't want to say that that's one of those things that shakes it for me, because I think you're absolutely right, and I really like the setup. I know that there is no point in this. If you're a reporter with a cameraman and they have a working camera in an event like this, you will leave it running, right?
Yeah,
you will
absolutely.
always leave it running. That they didn't have to stop and change tapes might be a question, but I'm not going to go there, because that would be doing too much that I do, and you would get mad at me. I think that's part of the reason that the first person shooter mode kind of starts to bug me, because I feel like the setup was so strong and they didn't necessarily have to go there. And they only go there for a little while, right?
Yeah, it's very short.
It's very short, and it is jarring, I think, visually to go there. And then I think they successfully pull out visually, and it regains some sense of control in spite of kind of the freneticness of the horror that's going on around them.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the story, because that's actually the place where I have a challenge. And so can you set up the story for us?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they're filming a group of firefighters while they are just kind of hanging around the fire station waiting for a call. A call comes in. They join these two firefighters, Jake and George, played by Jay Hernandez and Jonathan Sheck. And they go to this building where people have reported that this lady has kind of gone crazy, locked herself into a room. They go inside and they see this lady who looks, if I saw this lady, I would lock the door and, call the police, because she looks like she's just killed someone. But the
police are already there. Call the fire department.
Right, exactly. The police are already there. So what do? You go in and somebody gets
somebody
gets
call the mayor.
But basically, once they get inside this building and they realize there's a problem, as they try to leave, all of a sudden there were other cops and people coming up behind them who have orders to basically quarantine this building, because there is a report that something from this building. They've found disease, and they've traced it to this building basically, and they've quarantined it. They won't let anyone in or out. And now these people trapped inside, the tenants of the apartment complex, the police officer, the two firefighters, and the reporters now have to figure out what the hell they're going to do now that they're stuck in here with these people that are clearly diseased. And as it turns out, it's a terrible form of rabies that they've basically are catching, which progresses very quickly, turns them very violent, and it's in a way, it reminds me, once they are infected, it reminds me of Rage from 28 Days Later.
Right. Yeah, and that's okay. So that's what we have, and so the threat is this sort of mutated, weaponized kind of rabies virus. And it catches very quickly, and there are some really wonderful bits of horror, and not the I'm running into you, chasing you kind of a thing. And there's a lot of that where there's there's a single light, and it just kind of comes up on a face down the hall, or somebody standing down the hall, not moving, and then when the light hits them, they go into that shock rage mode and they run right into the camera. And so you get a lot of those little jolts, and they work well for me. I didn't find myself like not haunted by, or not jumping at the appropriate places. I really I don't usually like the horror stuff, and this one I do. I like this very much, just in terms of that experience. But I think the most horrific moments are the more subtle ones, when the woman is sitting in the corner at the end, and she says, no, I haven't been bit, and then they cut back to her and she's chewing off her own fingers.
Right.
Is just, that makes my skin crawl. The little girl, she only has a fever, and then she attacks her mother. That makes my skin crawl. There are those moments that I think are really effective.
Even just some of the jump moments. I swear, even after watching this, I don't know how many times, I still jump when out of nowhere the firefighter drops from like the third story and just like crashes onto the ground floor. It's like, oh man, I just forgot that was going to happen. I mean, it makes me jump every time.
Totally. And you know, they do those some of those bits really well, where they set up the you know, the conceit of the scene is, you know, they've got a camera and they're hiding in the vent or something, you know, peering into the room, and they're trying to be quiet, and yet they see a body that they thought was dead reanimates, and it's about to attack the CDC agent, and they scream just too late before the agent gets eaten. So that I think was really well. The problem that I have with it is it comes at the end, right? It's the discovery. Can you... So that this is what I see happen, and you tell me where I fall apart. And I've seen this movie several times. I like it. I enjoy it. The end throws me every time. So they're told, the cameraman and the remaining band of survivors, they have the collective kind of discovery that there's a way out. If they get to the basement, they can get to a manhole which will take them to the water supply, the sewer. They can get out. And so they try to make their way down there, but they can't because it's overrun by rabid apartment dwellers.
Right.
So they go up.
Right.
And they go up to the top floor apartment, right?
Right.
Right so far. And in that apartment, they discover, out of nowhere, right, they introduce the Doomsday Cult.
Right.
And it turns out that the member of the Doomsday Cult who owned that apartment had stolen this, mutated rabies virus, and that they were, and that's how it infected. There were a whole bunch of animals up there. It infected a dog, and that's how it got out. Right? That's what we're supposed to. That's how we believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he stole it. I was under the impression that he was developing it with all those rats, and just he was kind of this crazy man who kind of had locked himself into his room and was trying to come up with some virus to basically destroy humanity, and was doing it with rats, and one of the rats got out, rat infected the dog got infected people.
Okay.
Et cetera.
And so at one point, Scott looks up in this, there's a hatch that opens in the ceiling, and he looks up in there, and there's Crazy Boy up in the crawl space.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if we're supposed to have any connection to him. And then as they come down, they realize there's somebody else in this apartment, and he's he's just wearing underwear and wandering around in the dark. Catches Scott, eats him, catches Angela. We see her getting dragged off in the light. Was that the apartment dweller?
Yes.
And he was up there this whole time in the dark?
He was.
Just hanging out with his rats?
Yep.
Now, he was already rabid.
I don't know if he's rabid. I mean, he doesn't strike me as rabid. I mean, I think there's clearly something wrong with him. Maybe he's rabid, but he's not acting the same way that these other people are. But he's clearly infected with something. There's something wrong with him.
This is where it falls apart for me. And it's just these last few minutes. And I think they're very intense, and it's really great. And it gives you that sort of, Clarice in the basement, against the guy with the night vision goggles and puts the lotion in the basket kind of thing. And I like that vibe. It was very cool. But it felt like it was tacked on at the end to explain something that had been going on that didn't need explaining. And I think it was one of those bridge too far moments where they introduced this concept that now expected me to parse. And once I started to think about it and try to catch all the headlines on the newspapers and everything, I took me right out of the film. It took me right out of the film, and I felt like it was so well set up before because we already had the veterinarian who was vouching for all of the rabies stuff, and I bought it. I didn't need it. As soon as they asked me to think too hard about it, I felt like I didn't get it. So is there a thread that I missed? This is my big question. Is there a thread of clues that I missed in the beginning of the film, in the first and second acts, where I should have been set up so that when I saw the Doomsday Cult stuff, it would all make sense?
I don't think there's anything that's set up that would satisfactorily give you the answer that you're looking for. I mean, they do mention when they're going through all the people who live in the building, when they're going floor by floor, so they can kind of keep tabs on everybody, and they kind of hint at the guy up in the attic or the 5th floor of the apartment. This, oh yeah, but he's off in Boston, or he's out of town, or something like that. So they set us up that there is a guy who lives up there. We haven't seen him for a long time. So that's pretty much all we have, because then instantly they go from that to, oh, but what about the immigrant couple's father? He's sick up in bed. It kind of trying to throw a red herring in there, making you think that it's somebody else.
Right.
But that's it. I mean, that's really the only setup that we have. And I guess the reason it works for me is because it's all done so you don't get all of the details. You get little flashes of details. So you get a sense, okay, I can see that this guy, there's clearly something going on with him doing, some experiment with rabies. He wants to kind of, destroy the world with this disease, et cetera, et cetera. And somehow it went awry and his disease got out and is now killing everybody. He has no idea. And these people come into his place and he kills them. Now, why is there that little boy up there? I couldn't tell you. How does this guy go shop for groceries? I couldn't tell you. There are definitely problems, like when you start breaking it down, that it just doesn't really work.
But do you see what I mean, though? I mean,
yeah.
Okay, you finish your thing, because I have questions for you.
Well, no, I'm finished. I do want to use that, though, to leapfrog back to Wreck from the beginning of our conversation.
Okay.
So, but ask me your questions, and then we'll do the leap.
Well, so my question is this. First of all, you discover the rabid kid, and you discover the guy in his briefs upstairs hanging around at night because of what you've already seen in this film, and you've already given over to the fact that this is a virus gone crazy. If you had not included all of the extra kind of answers to the questions that we never asked about the Doomsday Cult stuff, would that have been less of a movie for you?
Like, and the guy wouldn't even be up there?
No, say the guy's up there. Couldn't he just have been the guy who is, rabid in the apartment upstairs? Maybe.
I don't know. I feel like it'd be really. It would make me ask more questions. Like, why was this guy just sitting up there and nobody heard any noises? Nobody knew anything. At least because they're throwing me these clues, I can kind of piece together. Oh, okay, this is why he's up there. This is why he's a recluse, et cetera, et cetera. I think the more I think about it, the less I find that it completely works, because, it does leave things rather vaguely put out there. I think if it didn't have those other clues, though, I don't think it would be enough. Here's the thing. I think what I would assume is that, okay, maybe this is a guy who caught it first and he just hasn't gotten out of his apartment. So he's just like in a really bad state of this disease.
Yeah, and I would vastly prefer that assumption, because and this is the thing, right? As soon as you bring up the Doomsday Cult, it makes me want to see that movie.
Yeah.
Right? That's a different movie. A Doomsday Cult is a loaded thing, and it's specific, and it's something that we're now suddenly seeing an epilogue for a film that was already, or that should have been made. And when I think this film really stands on its own without all that sort of garbage. But from a screenwriting perspective, right? I mean, when is too much character background too much? I mean, when is character background too much? It feels to me like these guys had sort of felt like they had written themselves in a hole and were trying to piece together all these threads that they perceived they had left out there, when I don't think that they did.
Well, I think that's the nature of a lot of horror movies is you set up a situation where there is this disease that's destroying this building. How did it get there? Why is it there? Aside from just a rabid dog, I don't know. I feel like people want to kind of, you want to have kind of this bigger answer. And by doing it this way, I don't know, I think it makes it a little more intriguing. Like, okay, so it's not just a rabid dog that happened to give somebody this really horrible strain of rabies, and now the whole building's being infected. But there's something much more nefarious going on. And in the context of a horror movie, that may be the reason to do something like that. I mean, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it's not something that needed to be there. I think you're right. In the context of structuring a script, you could just get away with probably just making it rabies. I mean, Cujo does that just fine. But when it's something like this where the story keeps getting funneled more and more narrowly down this hole of first you're outside, then you're trapped in the building, then it just keeps getting more and more narrow as far as kind of then less and less people are alive. You're getting pressed as far as which rooms you can occupy, and pretty soon you're pinned, and the only way you can go is into this penthouse suite. And once you're there, it's completely dark, and then there's a crazy boy and a crazy man. And, I can see the way that it's kind of everything is getting squeezed, and giving a little answer once you're in that point, I think can help. Maybe this wasn't the answer.
Well, I guess I have my sort of, and I really want to talk about the comparison to Wreck, because I know that Jaume Balaguero was not pleased. But the thing about this one for me is that it feels like if they're going to go down this road of the Doomsday Cult, they didn't give me enough up front to let me start to piece that puzzle together. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like this film was strong enough up front that it didn't actually need it anyway.
Yeah.
So, all right, talk about Wreck.
Well, the ending of Wreck, this whole part that you're talking about, once they get into that penthouse suite, that's where it's actually essentially built the same as far as everything that's happening, but all of the Doomsday stuff, it's all switched, it's all different. Now, I don't recall. I think in Wreck it's really the same. I mean, honestly, it feels like Gus Van Sant's Psycho remake to a certain extent. It feels just so shot by shot. Although this one does have some more fun set pieces, like when you're throwing the people off the balcony and stuff like that. I found that this one had a little more of that energy, which was nice. Wreck, though, does have a great and kind of just furious intensity. I mean, it's only 78 minutes long, and it builds to that much quicker once you get to the penthouse. But once you get to the penthouse, let me just read this. This is the synopsis from Wikipedia for that last scene, just so you can get a sense as to what the difference is, and see if you think that this would work any better for you.
Okay.
They then okay, so it's Angela, it's Angela, and what is the guy's name? It's Pablo, I believe. Yeah. So Angela and Pablo. They then search the penthouse and discover that its owner was an agent of the Vatican who is charged with researching and isolating a suspected virus believed to be the biological cause of demonic possession, which was later confirmed to exist in a young girl named Tristana Medeiros, who was raped by a group of priests. The agent kidnapped and brought the girl to the penthouse to conduct his research and possibly cure her. During this time, the possession managed to mutate and become contagious. The agent decided to seal her off, presumably to let her die of starvation and dehydration. A door to the attic opens, and Pablo uses his camera to look inside. A boy jumps at the camera and breaks his light. Pablo turns on the night vision to see in the dark and discovers the sealed door referred to earlier by the agent on an audio tape. The agent abandons his efforts to cure the girl after failing to engineer a vaccine. Tristana, now a horribly emaciated figure, begins searching the penthouse, holding a hammer. Angela and Pablo try to escape, but Pablo trips and is viciously attacked with the hammer by Tristana, causing him to drop the camera. It starts getting very similar here. Angela picks it up and runs, only to fall and drop the camera as well. She searches for it in the dark, but is unable to find it. The camera continues to record as the cries and screams of the possessed Tristana Medeiros are heard on the tape recorder, and Angela is dragged into the darkness, screaming. So it really is the exact same thing. It's just instead of this kind of doomsday cult trying to create this rabies virus to destroy humanity, this is a priest who has basically gone to this place with this girl, this possessed girl who had been raped by priests and they believed to be demonically possessed. He couldn't cure her, so he locked her into this room and sealed it off, and these two unwittingly let her out, and she is the one who kills them. Now, this demonic possession is essentially what is going around infecting everybody. I'm not quite sure how it gets out. I can't remember, but somehow it is the dog still that gets out, and there's rats and everything. But I don't know. Is that something that works any better for you, or is that equally as perplexing?
Well, no, it's one of those things. I like it. I like the idea of it. I like the concept. I think it's, I may prefer it to just the rabies excuse, because it at least gives us a twist on disease, and I like the religious angle, but I don't think just changing the ending would solve for me the problem of introducing too much story wrap up when if the first two acts don't give me enough of a hint that this is something I should look for. And obviously I haven't seen it, but what's your sense on that front? Do you feel like Wreck actually gives you a more complete story in that?
Not at all. I mean, I felt when I watched Wreck, I saw Quarantine first, and I think for a lot of people they found Quarantine first, and then because of the remake, it actually helped elevate Wreck into a place where people were now then discovering it. So I saw Wreck much later. I definitely enjoyed Wreck just as much as I enjoyed Quarantine. I do enjoy the difference at the ending in this story, or the differences between the two stories. I think that they both are interesting and compelling in their own ways. But I think, like you're pointing out, I mean, yeah, it doesn't really... It's never built to something that you're expecting. There's not there's no clues to help you kind of piece that puzzle together. And it does strike me as interesting. And I think the reason a lot of people kind of dislike Quarantine and they say Wreck is the better film, that's the one to watch, is because it really is a shot-for-shot remake. I mean, so much of it is done so straightforward. Let's just do it exactly the same. Let's do this scene exactly the same. Let's do these shots exactly the same. That if there's a script that has some inherent problems, like Wreck with this ending,
it was inherited.
Maybe the filmmakers should have looked at that and the problems with that ending and said, instead of doing a shot-for-shot remake, and yes, we're changing it up, and it's not, this demonically possessed girl up there, but now it's this guy who's been doing rabies research. Instead of that, just kind of creating their own version of it, maybe we should find a new way to write the ending so it does fit more, or maybe we rewrite some of the scenes in the beginning to build better into that. And so that probably is one of the things that is, I guess you could say, an inherent problem with Quarantine, is that the filmmakers and all the people involved didn't take the time to build it, or to basically take the pieces and rebuild it into something that was a more effective screenplay.
I think you nailed it.
Yeah,
I really do. I mean, that is exactly how I would set that up.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, I still enjoy it, but the more we talk about it critically, the more bothered I am by it. So thanks.
Well, and that's I think this is one of those films that I was really entertained by, and so it's one of those that I feel like it was so close.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The other thing that really, really pisses me off more than anything else about this film?
What?
The frickin' movie poster.
Yeah.
I don't think I have ever seen a movie poster that so blatantly gives you the ending of the film on the actual poster.
Yes.
It's like,
it's
this
horrible.
is the last shot of the film when the protagonist dies.
Yep.
Look.
Yep. Yep.
And not only that, the movie poster just has Jennifer in the infrared camera light as she's being dragged off, and then it has some text on the poster. The DVD cover and the Blu-ray cover takes it one step farther and actually adds behind her a creepy little figure with a glowing eye and a scary Nosferatu hand reaching for her. It's like, seriously. Good God, just let me watch the movie.
You will not get to watch the movie.
I don't need to now.
Yes. What else do you want to talk about this film? We can I think get all critical of it. We've already done our part there.
Yeah, and I'm just going back to the whole rec versus quarantine thing. Like you said, the director was very upset about this film. He said it's impossible for me to like because it is a copy. It's the same except for the finale. It's impossible to enjoy it after rec. I don't understand why they avoided the religious themes. They lost a very important part of the end of the movie. I think he's putting a little too much emphasis on his own ending. Again, like we were just talking about, I think they both work in their own right. Although, as we talked about, like I said, it's feeling a little more problematic. It did spawn a sequel, Quarantine 2 Terminal, which is an airport outbreak, and then they have to quarantine the airport. Just like Rec has, I think, created 3 sequels, Rec 2, Rec 3 Genesis, and then Rec 4 Apocalypse, I believe, is supposed to be coming out this year. I'm not sure if that is still in the works, but there's a whole bunch of these Rec films and quarantine films that if you are into this particular story, you can watch all sorts of different sequels.
I have not seen any of them.
I haven't either. I'm not sure. I after Rec, I am curious to see when you take a story like this that is essentially everyone dies.
Yeah.
What do you do next? Where are you going to go with it? I believe Rec 2 was it the military that goes into this building to try to figure out what happened? And we're following them, I believe.
That's certainly, I don't know. Having not seen either of them, but I find that more believable than, the idea of a quarantine too. Moving to the airport is slightly...
I guess the idea behind that is, okay, so maybe this dog bit somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe it's, well, let's see. Ralph had been bitten by a hamster, which is really a lab rat brought onto the plane by Henry for his school students. Okay, that sounds pretty bad.
So,
yeah.
But the movie did pretty well, yeah?
It did do pretty well for itself. It wasn't like,
How does it compare to Forrest Gump?
Well, when you look at Tom Hanks's films, it's, where does it fall in line with Tom Hanks's films? It did make money. It, looking at it, this is a little film. It cost $12 million to make. Oh, something I was going to point out. This is a film by John Erick Dowdle, who had, before this, made the Poughkeepsie tapes, which is another found footage film. And that is, I guess you'd say it was kind of his calling card that got him noticed so that he was able to then make Quarantine and make something with a much larger budget. So, yes, he and his brother got to play with $12 million on this one, which, they said was, unbelievable amount of money. And they were, thrilled with it. They built this entire apartment set in a stage. It's all an actual set inside a stage, which I'm always amazed by that. But when you're filming a movie where you have such long takes, this is something we didn't talk about, is the camera work. You're essentially, you have these really long takes. It's so hard to do that in an actual building. You need to find ways to run cables so that when you plot this whole move out where, it could be like a 6-minute shot that you're filming and you may start on one floor and then you're going to follow characters up the stairs to another floor, into a room, back out, maybe back downstairs, all these different things. And they have to find ways for all these people running the different cables for the monitors and for the audio and for everything else. They have to find ways to hide all of that. You can't just, normally it's behind the lens. You don't have to worry about it. But in this instance, when the camera is all over the place, it all has to be moving with the camera and behind the camera. So it makes for a much more difficult shoot. And they would say, they would have a day on set where they would spend almost the entire day just rehearsing and figuring out the moves for a particular shot because it was so long. And then by the time, it was about 6 o'clock at night, they're ready to roll. And, the studio was always getting really nervous. But by the time they'd hit 6 o'clock, they would do a take and they would just go through the whole thing. And that was 6 minutes. And they've got that huge chunk of film shot. And then they would do it again and again. And they'd film it, as many times as they needed to. And, all the actors, everyone was really afraid they were going to botch a line or screw something up. And the camera people were afraid they were going to move incorrectly or whatever. Because if you screw up, 5 minutes into a 6-minute shot, then everyone's going to be a little pissed at you. But yeah, so anyway.
That's amazing.
that being said, they did have $12 million to make this movie, and then $21 million to market this movie. So lots of money to really kind of push this out to people. And then it made, let's see, what did it make domestically? It made a little over 31 million. And internationally, it made about 9.6 million. So, it did okay for itself. In the scheme of things, it made a profit of about $8.3 million, and adjusted profit per finished minute is about $100,960.66 per finished minute.
Well,
hey, they made a profit.
That's yeah.
It let these guys go on to work with M. Night Shyamalan and make Devil after this. Good for them.
That's great. That'll be great for another podcast to talk about.
Not ours.
All right. Well, I think we should probably rank it.
Well, before we do, I just want to say just a couple other actors that I think are great in this. Rade Serbegia, I believe is how you say his name. I always love him. In every movie he's in, once I see him, I'm just like, okay, I'm in good hands because he's just a great character actor.
Yes.
And Greg German is in this as the vet.
Ally McBeal fame.
I know. Who'd have thought he'd be popping up in this? So
I
see.
like him a lot. He's fun to see. Yeah.
He's always fun to see. I always think of Waddles when I see him.
Yeah. Yes, that's so true.
Yes. And then briefly, we do get to have a little bit of Dennis O'Hare, who's just a great actor. He's kind of the drunk lawyer in this who gets mauled by the dog in the elevator. Not a fun death.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, but he's great. I love him, and he's been in American Horror Story, which is a lot of fun to see. And he's just a fun actor to watch.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right.
All right, now let's rank it.
Now let's rank.
All right, head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You can catch our list. You can friend us over there and see how our favorites stack up against yours.
All right, here we go. Quarantine or The Bourne Ultimatum?
Yeah, I can already tell this is going to be hard.
I'm going to say Bourne Ultimatum.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
It's a great end.
It is. No, it's that's right.
I know where this one will end up. Quarantine or Yee, a 1 and a 2.
No, it turns out it's not that hard.
It's not. It's not. Quarantine, right?
Yep.
I would say Quarantine too. I really enjoy watching Quarantine. I guess I'll just shut my brain off when I hit that end and not have to think about what
you have to.
Ruined it for me.
You kind of have to.
You do.
That's fair.
It's so stinking creepy. I don't care if it doesn't make any sense. It is the creepiest end to a film. I am so claustrophobic by the time I get to that end of that film. It's just crawling out of my skin. So it works really well on me. All right, Quarantine or Panic Room?
Oh, Panic Room.
Yeah, Panic Room. Quarantine or It Happened One Night?
Quarantine.
So completely different.
Yeah.
I'll say Quarantine too. I mean, I really like It Happened One Night, but I think it's one of those things. I just don't put on the movies from the 30s that often.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but that's the truth. Quarantine or A League of Their Own?
Huh. Well, that's familiar.
It sure is. I
put on Quarantine.
I would too. I 10 years ago I may have put on A League of Their Own first, but
that would be because Quarantine hadn't been made yet.
Been released yet. Yeah. No, but I really like A League of Their Own. I think I just liked it a little less this time. So Quarantine. All right, Quarantine. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah, even though it has a lot of problems, I still would go with Indy. It's Indiana Jones.
It's Indiana Jones.
Quarantine or Driving Miss Daisy?
Oh, man.
I enjoy Driving Miss Daisy, but I would put on Quarantine first.
I'd put on Quarantine first, and it feels like a betrayal.
It does feel like a betrayal. We're sorry, Jessica. All right. Quarantine is 81.
All right. Broke the top 100.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Hey, speaking of, just as an aside, have you seen, the movie The Raid 2?
Yes, I've seen The Raid Redemption. I have Raid 2 hasn't come out yet.
Right. So Have you seen the stunt coordination stuff for the high-speed car chase that has been floating around the web? All right, so what happens, I'll post this in the thing. It's this absolutely blows me away. So it's a 60-mile-per-hour car chase on a highway, and they have one camera. And the camera, like if you're just watching the finished shot, the camera approaches the car, right? It's as if the car is chasing the POV of the camera, right? And the camera gets closer and closer to the car until it goes in the passenger side window of the car, across through the car, out the rear passenger side window of the car, and into over to another car. Right? One camera, one shot. And the setup for this thing is unreal. The camera is on. One cameraman is holding it on a follow car. That car gets close to the stunt car. It turns out the passenger side seat has been removed, and it's actually a cameraman dressed as a seat who grabs the camera and hands it through the rear passenger side window. Which is, and it is then grabbed by a guy laying on his back about 6 inches above the ground, the highway below him, on a rig, and he grabs the camera and holds it there on the opposite side of the car as the camera is then picked up by somebody else. It is amazing.
Wow, so that's so Steven Spielberg did that in War of the Worlds, but I think a lot of it was digitally done. This sounds really compelling because it's actually crazy people doing this.
It is exactly why it's so cool. This is a guy dressed as a car seat, is what this is.
Son, what do you want to be for Halloween?
I want to dress like a car seat. Oh, man, very clever. A lot of cleverness.
Holy cow, right. That's pretty funny.
I'll post that in the show notes on the website at thenextreel.com. You should go check that out because that's where you're going to find it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's all we have. You got anything else for the people? Where do we go next week? What are we doing next week? We talked about this.
Yeah, we're going to head over to Manhattan, and we're going to take a romp with the American version of Godzilla, Cloverfield.
That's going in the show.
That was horrible. What was that?
That was my next ringtone.
Oh, great.
It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies.
And some stinkers.
Well, true. But you know, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
In Season 3, we covered even more great adaptations like The Night of the Hunter and It Happened One Night, both part of our Couples on the Run series.
We talked about No Country for Old Men. The Coen brothers so rarely adapt someone else's work.
We had some fun rom-com adaptations like About a Boy, based on the Nick Hornby novel, and Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, adapted from Rachel Cohn and David Levithan's book.
In our terribly and naively named foreign language series, we discussed The Brilliant City of God and The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which I won't ever be able to watch again, ever.
But could you read the original memoir?
I don't know, maybe?
We had our Richard Dysart series with adaptations like The Day of the Locust and Being There.
Plus, we had that fantastic interview with the man himself.
The one where we had him sit on the floor?
Because this chair was so squeaky. Good times.
We did our first Tom Hanks series with Forrest Gump, adapted from Winston Groom's novel, plus Apollo 13, based on Lost Moon by Jim Lovell.
And we did another year series looking at films from 1981, including Das Boot, Gallipoli, and Thief, all based on books.
Listeners can dive deeper into all of these original stories and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book, play,
movie,
video game. You bet. We have talked about some video game adaptations as well. It doesn't matter the source, just follow the link. Every purchase supports the podcast.
Check out the full list at thenextreel.com/originals and get reading, watching, performing, or playing today.